The topic that we want to focus on today is managing our emotions. I think most people can relate to the fact that we often don't manage our emotions well. And in our leadership class, we spent a great deal of time talking about emotional intelligence. And this is the work of Daniel Goldman, and there are lots of others who've created content on the topic too. But I like the way he breaks it up into these four areas. The first one being self-awareness. The second one is self-management. Then the third is empathy, which is really other awareness. And then the fourth is relationship management. So I think today we're going to spend time talking in those first two, self-awareness and self-management. You mentioned that there was a time when you had a little bit of difficulty managing your emotions. So is there an example or a way that you can share with us that manifested in your life? What was going on? What happened?
Before I went to PA school, when I was working, I was working with patients. I was working for a dermatology group, and I had this patient. She was just a difficult one. You couldn't really please her. She was kind of bothered by anybody who wasn't the doctor. So it was hard to communicate with her and to try to let her know that you're there for her and not, just to put on this front. And I was actually like 7 months into my job, and I never had to deal with that. They were usually pretty accepting, and they go with the flow patients. But then with her, it was a little difficult. So I broke down. I left the room, and I couldn't even finish my patient interview with her. I was like, I don't know. I got so flustered. I could feel my skin like getting hot because I didn't know what to do. So I left, and then I broke down, and it was kind of that moment where I said, like, I need a thicker skin. Everybody's different. Everybody deals with patients differently, just people in their lives, maybe people who are seen as like their superiors. They might, talk to them, treat them differently. But I, in that moment, I was like, this is awful. And then it was like, well, that was my first experience with somebody who's a little more difficult, and I plan on seeing a lot of different patients across different, walks of life in my lifetime. So I'd really like to get that experience now, say, I'm going to break down today, but I know for next time, if I come across this patient or someone like her again, I'm going to be able to deal with it.
Absolutely. And that's what there are so many opportunities for growth when things go wrong. And you touched on the two things with the anecdotes that you share. First, the anxiousness, the stress level, and then the second is how we manage conflict, because the situation with this patient is conflict. And you're in PA school, which for anybody who doesn't know what PA school is, Barbara is studying to be a physician's assistant. You reacted emotionally because you're a human being, right? You had a bit of a breakdown. You left the room. Then you came to a realization. But tell me a little bit about the process of expressing your emotions. I mean, did you keep it to yourself? Were you able to talk to somebody at work? Did you reach out to someone? What were some of the behind the scenes moments that were happening as you were dealing with this situation?
Yeah, so it was very obvious that I was upset. So I walked out of the room, and one of the nurses that I worked with, her name was Barbara too, actually. And she was so understanding, and she's been there, for I think 15 plus years. So she's seen it all too. And she knew the patient well. And she says, you know what, Barbara, it's nothing against you. This is something that she's done to this medical assistant, this doctor, this PA, and it's really kind of a losing battle trying to please her. So she's like, you did the right thing in leaving, because, sometimes when people don't, they say things that are mean or that they don't mean. And she says, I don't think this is going to act negatively in your life. She said, if anything, this is a learning point for you, so that you can understand that sometimes people react in ways that aren't your fault. And I thought that was really helpful, because she kind of reminded me that it wasn't anything that I did or said. And because I was feeling discouraged, I was like, well, if I can't, properly handle a patient that, doesn't absolutely express, joy in the room with me, what is that going to mean for me? And I don't want to be like a weak physician assistant someday.
Every now and again, experience these difficulties with certain people. And sometimes we're even that difficult person in some instances. One strategy that's helpful, and this is why developing the emotional intelligence, which you are doing and will continue to do until we die if we're growing, you can identify the feeling, but then it's a familiar feeling. I've been here before, and I know that I can get past it. And I know it's not really about me. You have to imagine what must have happened in this person's life that this is the way they treat people who are trying to help them.
Mm-hmm.
And then taking a step back to understand, like, this is not directly at me, just like your nurse coworker told you. It's not about you. Everybody's just dealing with a lot. I think it's a stressful time for people, and we often tend to take it out on the people it has absolutely nothing to do with, which is my best guess at what this patient was doing with you. Part of it is making sure we're taking really good care of ourselves, and then having empathy and understanding for other people, but still protecting ourselves. So let's switch gears then, Barbara. How do you take good care of your own mental health?
Like during my undergrad education, I neglected to take care of it, but I also don't think it was the same level of stress. I think it was kind of comparing apples to oranges. But now, I was away. I was 5 hours from home, and I was in an apartment by myself. So it's really easy, actually, when you're by yourself to get kind of like bogged down with everything and to make everything feel like the world is just going to fall apart if you don't do the assignment today, or I'm always doing things in advance if I can. So, if I was always putting so much stress on those things. I think what helped me the most was having people and having the connections with other students who could share the experiences, and they were in the same boat as me. They knew what it was like. They were feeling the same level of stress. And I think it reminding myself that there's other people like me and who have the same stress. I mean, if you're in a PA program, you're probably a type A person. You got there because you are determined, you're motivated, and we share kind of the same brains in a way that we like to focus on school, but we collectively as students learned to put some focus in other people and relationships, and just remember that it's not all going to be about school, because someday you'll graduate, and then what will you have? You want to have your relationships.
Really powerful advice, and that will apply in any profession, Barbara, too, especially for those of us who really have a strong sense of integrity and dedication and commitment to the things we sign up for, whether it's PA school or a master's in health administration or physical therapy, whatever degrees, whatever careers people end up pursuing. It's easy, like you said, to lose ourselves in all of that and put our productivity before our humanity, before our need to connect, because you are making a commitment to achieve something. So it makes sense that that's going to be top of mind. And I remember in our leadership class talking about a book that I'd read called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. It was a woman who had been working in hospice care, and she wrote this book, and no one in the content said that they wish they worked more. In fact, it was quite the opposite. The regrets were having lost relationships because of work. Because one of the top regrets is they wish they had worked less.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not to say that we don't honor our commitments and that we're not people with incredible integrity and dedication, but that we can't lose sight of the connections with important people in our lives. So I think it's excellent that you were able to find people in your group. So I think it can be very easy to isolate yourself, especially if you're living alone, right? And in a program, but to intentionally build a support network, especially with people who are in it with you, who totally get exactly what you're going through when you're going through it. If you had to sum up your message in one sentence for everybody listening, what is the core of your message?
Out of everything we discussed, I think the self-care is the most important aspect, and studying and working, it's important. It's what we do. It's what we go to school for, to spend our lives doing something. But replenishing yourself, your relaxation, things you enjoy doing, friends, family, those things are equally, if not more important, because you cannot at all be the best version of yourself unless you do things for yourself. I always think of a quote that self-care is giving the world the best version of you instead of what's left of you. Because today we tend, especially students, we tend to wear ourselves down. We have nothing left to give at the end of the day. And I think if we can keep a balance, if we can try, even if you don't have it figured out, just try to balance things, because it's so helpful and it really makes you feel better.
Absolutely. I love that quote. I really like that. That's great, Barbara. And
Yeah.
if you had to put your message on a t-shirt, you only have a few words, what does the t-shirt say?
Work 40%, relax 60%.
Okay. And this coming from a highly productive individual. So good advice. Good advice. What's the most recent thing you did for yourself that was for fun, for complete enjoyment that you'd love to do?
Normally I would say 4 to 5 times a week. I go on my run, and then I usually do about 2 to 3 miles, because that makes me feel like I love getting my heart rate up. That's just one thing that makes me feel alive and healthy. And I also really like going to the beach. So I'll listen to music. I'll do something to kind of turn my mind off.
Very nice. Yes, we need to pursue these things that we love and enjoy. It's very healthy to have fun.
Yes.
It really does wonders for our work to be able to tap into more creative, more relaxed part of ourselves rather than, like the quote you said, rather than the leftovers. You're in your early 20s, Barbara. You're studying to become a physician's assistant. If you could go back in time to talk to your 18-year-old self for 15 seconds only, what would you say in those 15 seconds?
First, listen more than you talk. God gave you 2 ears and one mouth for a reason. You can learn so much from your professors, your friends, your family. And I would also say practice these self-care things. They don't happen overnight. You know, watch 15 minutes of a show. If you feel uncomfortable doing that, try 10 minutes. Something that makes you relaxed and it makes you um, really just detach for a little bit.
Very good advice. And you know what? It's never too late. We need reminders of that for ourselves too. Can you tell me a little bit about the leadership class experience for you from your end, and what were some of the things that stood out that you were able to take into your life after graduation?
I really enjoyed just being with a diverse group of kids. I mean, our class wasn't small, I don't think. I mean, it wasn't huge, but I knew a little bit about everybody. And I think that that was helpful, because it helped me when we did do group work. It helped me to kind of motivate each other. And I liked that. I liked how everything that we did as a class and you did as a professor allowed us to be mingling with each other, instead of, okay, everyone go home and do your separate work and then come back with, whatever it is that I asked of you.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear it, Barbara. And that is one of my core values as an educator. I most definitely want great relationships with my students. I mean, I'm a realist. I don't expect that that's going to happen every single semester with every single student. But the reason that I do what I do is because I value those relationships and I feel I have a contribution to make. However, I'm one person. There's always going to be more students in the room than there are of me. And I know how valuable it is for students to hear from each other. Barbara, what's a skill that you're still working on? Something you're continuing to develop in yourself?
My confidence. There's some things I know, but there's a lot that I don't know. And I think as a provider, what you can say to yourself is, I know what I know and I know what I don't know. And it's important to be able to reach out for help, but also be confident in what you do know. I learned a lot. Everybody learns a lot through school, through life, through work. And it's hard to show people what you know unless you have the confidence to say it. So it's definitely a work in progress.
And it will probably continue to be one. And it takes conversations like this. It's one of the main reasons why I want to share student voices and content like this with other people, is that we all need reminders. None of us have it all figured out, especially not when it comes to taking excellent care of ourselves. So we need to hear from other people. Last question I want to ask you is, what's something that you're incredibly proud of yourself for?
I mean, I'm proud of what I've accomplished academically. We actually missed it due to COVID, but we were supposed to have a white coat ceremony. And that was kind of, it was supposed to act as that moment between you finished looking in your books and studying, but now it's time to go out and, touch patients and, be hands on, learn the skills that you'll need to know. So that moment is supposed to be when your professors say you're ready. And we missed that, unfortunately, but I was still so proud on that day because I was like, I really did that. Like I did that by myself. I really had the support of my friends. We got through it together, but that was my brain. I did that. So I was really, really proud that day.
Well, I'm really proud of you too, Barbara, and I know that you're going to continue to do good work and impact patients in a way that is filled with compassion and not just a checklist of symptoms and a diagnosis, but that you'll be able to see a whole person, and even being able to speak as a provider to self-care. I mean, that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
I think that that's an area where in medicine it's growing, where physicians assistants, nurse practitioners, they're able to see that it's more than just the symptom or the condition, that there's a whole person that needs to be taken good care of. Thank you so much for being here today, Barbara. It's really great to see you and to catch up and to share these great messages with everybody listening. I'm thankful.